we've seen these straight ideas, these cis ideas of what trans identity is, but this is authentic and real and true trans experiences coming directly from the trans horse's mouth.
So recently I was asked in a Q&A about my sexuality and I answered honestly this. Okay, we're going there because there's so many questions. People have been asking whether I am bi or I've questioned my sexuality, like a lot of people ask that, and I don't want to be the straight person that profits off the ambiguity of my sexuality. Have you ever questioned your sexuality? Like, you're not sure about your sexuality. I am. Like, I'm not going to be the person who's like, oh, I don't know, yo. Like, I do know that I am a straight person who is a ally in training. I'm not going to be perfect at that. What surprised me in the comment section was how many people thanked me for that. And I mean, it's always nice to be thanked, but genuinely I was like, I did nothing. And honestly, as somebody who's a friend of a lot of queer people, I often feel like I'm also doing nothing. So to all my queer pals out there who are watching this, I promise, dear God, this is not a video in an attempt to straight-splain to you how you feel. This is for the people who potentially watch my channel who are cis, straight people as well, and often feel like they're not doing enough. And there isn't really an inspirational punchline here to that comment. You're probably right. You're probably not doing enough. I'm definitely not doing enough. And as hate crime against transgender people in the UK has risen by 81% recently, I thought it was time to sit down and have a little chat about why we feel so uncomfortable about sticking up for people who aren't like us. When I have friends who are victims of these kinds of crimes, it comes time for me to admit to myself that in the midst of me consuming all of these queer voices through the books that I read, the theatre that I watch, the incredible educational YouTube channels I love, links in the description. Please do not learn about queer issues from a very ditzy straight girl. And through the fear of speaking over queer voices, particularly trans voices, the fear of speaking over them sometimes stops me from speaking at all. And I realise that's a problem, not because trans voices shouldn't be the loudest people in the room when we talk about trans issues. They should. But by people who don't suffer from an issue, not talking about an issue, not being visible about an issue, or not mentioning it outside of the context of consuming queer content, we can unintentionally act like it's not happening and that it's not our problem. And it very much is. Me not finding the words or hiding behind the idea of letting queer people speak for queer people as an excuse for me not talking about it in my everyday life and campaigning for it. Like a lot of people, I think I operate in a few different spheres. Some of those are more extreme for some people and some of them are more very close Venn diagram. You might be somebody like me that interacts with people in their lives that don't get queer issues, and it's not that they hate it or they're against it, it's just they feel uncomfortable by it. They haven't had it explained to them, they haven't been exposed to it, and it's uncomfortable. And for those people, it's often the people to whom queer issues aren't their problem that the importance of understanding it can be flagged at all. As allies, we're the best people to take on these conversations in some spaces. Loosen the screws a little bit, question the norm, oil everything up, put things in people's head, bring up the fact that trans abuse is on the rise and that's a bad thing for everybody, mention how it's against the law and also awful, and put it on the straight agenda. There is a straight agenda, I know it. A systematic abuse that's happening on our country at the end of the day is a systematic abuse system. I don't want it. Not for me. Do not want here. Thank you. Favourite Michael Moore quote, I refuse to live in a country like this and I'm not leaving. Before I speak more to this issue, I think I've spoken enough. I want to introduce you to one of my oldest friends, Teddy. Is this video an excuse to introduce you to the wonders of Teddy? Probably. We met when we were about 13 and they have a show that is coming soon that I wanted them to talk about, and also just talk about anything else they wanted to talk about. Like, that I wanted you to hear from Teddy because they're an incredibly important person in my life and because there is an irony in me centering myself in this video. So we sat down while I was recording the trailer for their show Since You've Been Gone to talk a little bit about how they feel about themselves and why they wrote the show the way they wrote it. I was also making a trailer for Mika's show. Mika is an incredible trans masc playwright. They also have a show called Pink Lemonade that you totally should go and see. So I'm including some clips from them here as well. Please enjoy. After 10 years of watching my face on this channel, I'm giving you a welcome break with much more interesting people than me. Go.
My name's Micah Johnson. I'm an artist, theatre maker, writer, performer.
My name is Teddy Lamb.
On. Cool.
Looks like it. Do you want me to clap? It's a thing.
Oh my god, yes. I'm an influencer now. Just keep clicking.
My name is Teddy Lamb. I am 29 years old, and I am a non-binary playwright and theatre maker from East London.
How did that happen?
I moved to East London and then I started writing theatre.
You're like location first.
Yeah, I was like, I need to be as pretentious as possible. Where do those people live? East London. Me and Lena met, God, like, how many years ago?
Turn of the century?
I mean, we met in...
On the top of a triceratops?
We met in the Victorian times when we worked at the same workhouse. I have written a play. It's called Since You've Been Gone, like the Kelly Clarkson song. It's a play about me and my best friends, and a lot of them are no longer with us, unfortunately, so it's everything that I wanted to say to them and everything that I want to update them on within my life, within my gender, within my sexuality, and the things that I've learned about myself through them and through their deaths. And yeah, it's a lot more uplifting and happier than that sounds, I promise.
Your plays are always really fucking funny. I feel like you could write a play about necrophilia and it would be quite funny.
Now there's a challenge. Theatre has definitely impacted who I am and everything about me. One of my earliest memories is my parents taking me to see the Care Bears live at Oxford New Theatre. And I couldn't stay and watch the show. I was so petrified about what might be behind the curtain. So I think that's why they signed me up in like youth theatre classes, so I could see what was behind the curtain. It was nothing.
It was therapy.
Yeah, it was literally therapy.
My name's Mika Johnson, and I'm an artist, theatre maker, writer, performer. I identify as non-binary, transmasculine. As a trans person of colour, I feel like there are so many stories to be told. Queer people, we're multifaceted, you know. We can't be put into one category. Like, I feel like as queer and trans artists and performers, you know, people want to come to the theatre and be entertained by us, but actually I think what needs to happen is that support needs to go beyond the stage, beyond the screen, like the solidarity that we need from people that see us, that come to see our work. Since kind of me, you know, accepting that I'm trans, I guess masculinity has been something that I still am trying to kind of like reimagine for myself. I feel like theatre still now, it can be very inaccessible. Price-wise, like, it's expensive to go to the theatre. And I didn't actually see that much theatre when I was younger. I went to college and did acting there, and actually I think maybe besides pantomime at Christmas, like that was probably when I went to college and we went to like London. I think I saw Wicked, and I remember, I forget the name of the Green Witch, Alphabet, yeah, was played by this black woman, and she was like incredible. Like, I was absolutely blown away by it. So basically, when I was younger, I joined a young actors company because I'm from Nottingham. So I joined a young actors company when I was about 17, and then it was a lot of devising and a lot of physicality, a lot of like, you know, writing in the space. So that's kind of where I found my love for devising work and creating my own work, really. I guess my journey's just progressed from then, and you know, I moved to London about over a year ago now, and things are going really well, creatively. Yeah.
What does like the word masculine mean to you, and do you think it's changed since you've written what you've written?
There are so many intersections that make up an individual, and I feel like there is still so much space since kind of me, you know, accepting that I'm trans. I guess masculinity has been something that I still am trying to kind of like reimagine for myself, and I think all different types of people interpret masculinity differently. But what I do feel like is, as a society, like, we do need to reframe what masculinity is, because it can be very dangerous and it can be very toxic. I feel like there's a big problem with how masculinity is interpreted, and I feel like for me, like, I'm still figuring that out in the most positive way possible.
Initially, theatre helped me, like, basically hide who I was when I needed to. It helped me just when I was very unhappy, when I was very depressed, when I was a child, figuring out who I was and still not sure of my gender or anything like that. It helped me to just pretend to be someone else for a while. And that was really important at the time. And then now it's really helping me own who I am and use theatre as activism to spread messages of equality and like trans rights and stuff like that. We've seen Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club playing a trans woman. We've seen these straight ideas, these cis ideas of what trans identity is, but this is authentic and real and true trans experiences coming directly from the trans horse's mouth.
I am sometimes the first person to clam up when non-binary conversations happen around me with people who don't understand them or feel differently to me about them. And I've been thinking a lot about ways to pose this in a softer way. Not that I don't think protest should be hard, and I think the way we approach authority should be hard, but bringing people around to a wider way of thinking without shouting at them is something that's really important to me. So some of the things that I was thinking about when I have had successful conversations about this are here. There are 3 things I was thinking about when people ask you why they should use, say, they, them pronouns for a person who wants to be referred to as they, them. Number 1, it's polite. A softer, less relevant example, if my name's Lena and you ask me if that's really my real name, and I say, well, actually, my full name is Kathleen, they'd be like, well, I'm calling you Kathleen now. That would be rude. That's not what I told you my name was. So respect, that's just politeness. So I think for some people, framing it in the idea, the sacred in Britain idea of being polite is helpful. Number 2, pointing out this complicated, nuanced topic. If society has indoctrinated us all to think there are 2 genders, it's going to take more than one conversation or one revelation to see that. Point out to somebody that sometimes it's not something you're supposed to get straight away. It's something you need to look into. If you don't experience it, it's not as easy to see. Very, very bad analogy. Maybe I should just take my shoes off and show people when they ask. But these are my very old charity shop Nike shoes. Stick with me, please. Or don't. I'm a very embarrassing straight anti-ally. Here's the pink side, here's the blue side. This bit in the middle exists. It's beautiful. It's a little bit stained by puddles, but we'll move on. That's not part of the allegory. It's got this purple bit in the middle that is still there. It doesn't take away from this side of pink. It doesn't take away from this side of blue, but it exists there in the middle. And if you're at the back of the shoe, if you're living your life at the back of the shoe and you're, say, here, and you say, hey, look, I can only see 2 genders. I can only see this or this. You are only this or this. Consider that you're sitting at the bottom of the shoe. And that's all right, because you wouldn't be able to see around the corner straight away. You'd have to have somebody explain it to you and tell you. And some people sit here. They can totally see the purple area over here. And they know that's it. But if you're somebody who exists back here, that's okay. But know that the shoe exists and you might be on the back of it. That was an awful analogy. I scratched that. I regret doing that. Find things in your own life with friends that don't understand trans issues to try and explain it in a way that's personal to them. Also, when people object, I find it helpful to bring up the idea of language in general, why we think language is static. For instance, the word man was always a gender-neutral term until the Norman Conquest. Lots of language that we live with now has been changed by the generations before us. Why shouldn't we tweak how we use language to fit our society and what we're experiencing? In fact, if we don't change the way we use our language, and if we don't make choices around that, we will be the first generation to not. It's actually tradition to keep changing. It would be disrespectful, no, to our ancestors to keep the same language static. How boring for the future linguistic graduates of the world. What's happening? How is this what I'm doing? I'm sorry, everyone. This is the imperfect way to talk about things is often the only way, because I don't have a perfect way of talking about this topic. So this is what you have. Have this very strange cake. Moving on, I chatted with Teddy and I asked them to list a couple of ways that people could be better allies, and they had some really interesting things to say, some of which I'd never thought of before. 3
things that you can do as a cis or straight ally to trans people. Number 1, practice gender-neutral language at home. Practice it with your friends, practice it with your family, so that when you make non-binary friends, when you go into a meeting with a non-binary person, it is completely natural and normal and rolls off the tongue. Number 2, call out microaggressions when you see them. If you see someone being misgendered, then you don't need to make a big deal out of it. You can just take that person aside and quietly be like, oh, by the way, they use this pronoun. And number 3, don't be a passive voyeuristic ally. Don't read a book, buy tickets to a play, go see a film. Create that allyship within your own life. It's not just about watching us and as another. It's about creating a space where we are comfortable 24/7 to live our full lives.
Something I didn't think was like using like they for people that identify as he or she but are cis.
Yeah, well, so it's
Like just being like, oh,
yeah. So there's. I think it's very important to respect everyone's pronouns, whether they're cis or not. But if you're with a bunch of cis mates and you're talking about how you can be allies amongst yourselves or something, then for an hour just they each other so that you get used to it. I think it's very important that we don't they everyone all the time, because trans women and trans men fought very hard for their rights to be seen as who they are and who they authentically are. So let's not they everyone, but you can practice that within groups where that's safe, within groups where you discuss that, and just make sure that it's easy, because a lot of people slip up and it's not, we know that you don't mean to and we know that it's not offensive, but the more you practice it, the less you're going to slip up, and the more you practice it away from non-binary people, the less you slip up in front of us and then feel bad about it.
I'm going to end the video with some notes from some of the wisest people I know in the whole world, and those people are people from the Gumption Club. So here are some thoughts from some lovely queer Gumptioners. Defend your friends' pronouns if they would like you to. Ask them first. It's going to be more likely that their pronoun is used when they aren't present, so it really helps having other people do the correcting too. Didn't think of that, because obviously when you refer to people, you're like, you can just be like, hey, you, and their pronouns sometimes don't come into it. So it is when they're not, that's practical. I always appreciate it when my straight friends talk back to casual homophobia or transphobia. It's a lot easier to do it when you don't have a personal stake in the issue at hand. As a bisexual cis woman, I call out more transphobia in my workplace than I do homophobia, because transphobia makes me feel angry, while homophobia and biphobia makes me feel unsafe. That was a much better way of explaining what I was trying to say at the beginning of the video about how when you have less of a direct experience of something, it can be more impactful to the people who don't agree with you to stand up for it, because you show that it's a general concern that everybody should be concerned about, and not something that's specifically something that only people experience. I really hate when people expect that just because I'm bisexual, I will have an opinion on everything queer related, and I'm always up to date with the news and teach them about every topic. Like, I live in a shitty Eastern European country, we have enough problems, I don't have the mental capacity to also follow American politics too closely. Very, very fair. A big thing is making sure you're not outing your mates without their consent. Just because they have confided their identity to you doesn't necessarily mean they're ready for everyone to know. Even though you might want to defend them and correct misgendering, if they're not ready for that, staying quiet might make you a better ally than being loud. A lot of people are saying how lots of queer experiences are different, so it's very important to check with people and not assume that what you read about them experiencing is what they're actually experiencing. Something I've heard about being a good trans or NB ally is that if you get someone's pronouns wrong, apologise and move on. Don't make it about you and say, oh, it's just hard for me to remember, etc. Ultimate social media tip: before posting or tagging someone mentioning anything sexuality related, make sure you have their permission and you've had a convo about who follows them, on what socials, and who they're out to. Accidentally outing people on Facebook via tagging them in a meme is annoying and avoidable. Don't expect performance of our sexuality or gender identity for your benefit. We don't owe you proof of our queerness. Yes, we are powerful angelic creatures, but that doesn't mean we have to show you our 8-foot glowing wings. Regardless of your thoughts on somebody's gender, sexuality, or pronouns, try to avoid saying things like, oh, I've always suspected, or oh, duh, I've always known, if someone comes out to you. They haven't necessarily always known, and it's a crappy feeling to think that somebody's predicted things like that behind your back. It's okay to get things wrong sometimes. It can happen, but listen when you're corrected, be receptive, take it on board. No one expects you to know everything immediately. The queer community is huge and broad, and we're all still learning. Educate yourself about queer history, especially around trans and non-binary gender. So many people think of those things as new or Western ideas. Many indigenous cultures have recognised multiplicity of gender for their entire histories, and the reason many people don't know about this is because of white colonialism, which intentionally tried to suppress gender diversity. Yet another reason why racism and queerness need to be talked about together. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful. Main message, please go and see Since You've Been Gone and Pink Lemonade. They're both just incredible shows, so do it now. Thank you so much for putting up with my waffle. I hope I didn't make too many faux pas. I think you can tell from this video that I feel nervous making it, and I think that's the point of what I was saying at the beginning of the video. I feel the fear of speaking over often stops people from speaking at all, and that's not okay, because I am the person who benefits from straight privilege and doesn't have the same things to be scared of. So But if I did make any faux pas, please tell me kindly in the comments. I would love to keep learning. At the time of recording, Pride in the UK is tomorrow. We've had the whole of Pride Month in June, and I'm very aware that the 81% crime thing is happening all year. We can't stop talking about this just because Pride's over. People are experiencing this every single fucking day of the year. So I think it's also a good thing to think about the ways that we can all start talking about this more with the connections that we have and the people in our lives that aren't connected to the queer community, and people like me who are very allies in training, level 0. There is also a link to the Gumption Club if you're confused about what the Gumption Club is and would like to know more. That is also below. Okay, I'm gonna leave now. I'm gonna go. Frog snug out.